Alright, so we'll be working on re-outfitting this old Blackhawk canoe. Alright, birth date of 1991. And we'll be doing a wood gunnel installation as well as all the rest of the bits and pieces. Alright, so we've trimmed our in-whale pieces here, and we're going to laminate 2 of these on each side so we have something to drop a bolt down through to affix our seat and thwarts and hardware. We'll get those set up inside the boat, and then we'll work on the out-whale pieces and get that all clamped down. Okay, so we just routed out the ends of the in-whales so that they'll notch up under the ends of the deck to allow this all to be flush, the in-whale and the out-whale. So we'll get those all lined up. Got a good utility knife to clean up the ends here and make sure everything sits nice and flush and square. Once those are in, we can clamp it down and then work on drilling the countersinks and installing the gunnels with the screws. Alright, so I've applied wood glue to the 2 pieces of the in-whales and now clamped them all, making sure that at least the in-whales are as level as possible and roughly in line with the out-whale, because the next thing I'm going to do to tack this down so that we can switch the clamps over to the other side is going to be drilling all our holes and screwing the darn things together. So just double checking everything's set. Don't have a ton of working time. Once we thin that or spread that glue out and tack it together, everything looks good. I shouldn't have a whole lot of sanding to do to even everything out. So next thing is we bust out the drill. Here we go. Alright, so I've clamped an out-whale in place as well here. And now we're just going to mark the cutoffs. We got the stern end here. And then we'll lop off the bow and then do the other side. So we've got our first out-whale trimmed and just clamping it back on to make sure it lines up before we cut the other one. And that will roll in quite nicely. So now we get a match. When in doubt, definitely cut long. It's easier to remove material than to try to stretch a gunnel out. I'm not so sure that that's a thing. Good luck. Alright, so with our drilling up next, we've got our countersink bits. I've already done a bunch of pilot holes and scrap a piece of gunnel here and figured out that for our hardware we're going to run with the number 10, and I've already figured out the depth that I want to make sure that we get through everything into the other side, and then mark that off so I don't go too far and pop out the other side, and to make sure I also don't go too shallow, which would mean that we wouldn't even get the out-whale attached, which would be an issue. So now that we've got that all lined up, here we go. Now as I'm screwing everything in, I'm going to keep moving the clamps because really I want to do my best to keep the out-whale and the in-whale now unit in line. The in-whale's pretty tacked up and it's not shifting. It's already clamped in a spot where it's going to be without raising and lowering. One quick thing about the drilling and the screwing is that, so I'm using an impact driver here to get the screw started, but I am using a hand Phillips head to finish it off because we don't want to over tighten and split these. That would be a whole lot of work for not a whole lot. So we're just going to keep inching along, but there are our first handful of fasteners in. We're working from the middle to the outsides to make sure that we get everything even. And then once we have the right side of the canoe done, we'll do the same thing on the left. All right, that's one side done. The in-whale's all drilled. Now I'll have to do a few more on the out-whales at either end, just to do to the spacing on the stern where I'd like to put one. I can't get a good angle with the drill, so we'll do an extra out-whale screw here or there. And then we got the left side. I'm going to do the left side first so then I can reset the my tape buffer on our countersink. And then one of the last things to do to fasten all these will be to tack down the ends. Alright, so we now have the out-whales, everything attached. Our final finish screws at both the bow and the stern where I couldn't get from the inside. Pop, pop, pop. it fleshed up pretty well. Because we're doing a compound curve with these trapezoidal outwales, there is a little bit of gappage at the sides that I was able to sand down to bring in. One word of caution that I was aware of putting too much pressure on the end as we're trying to twist it in 3 different directions and then potentially splitting it. If we had a steam box or something to soften that would probably go a long ways and let it dry in place. But we don't, and I could be happy with that there. So next up, putting the guts in. All right, so before we can install the hardware, we got to sand down the gunnels so it can, 1, make sure everything's nice and flush, and 2, get rid of any of that wood glue that may have eked out. And 3, these gunnels have been sitting around for a while, so they had a little bit of weathering to them, so we want to take that top layer off before we seal it all up. At the end, because of the shape of the deck, I found it changed the height a little bit, so I grabbed a block plane here to smooth that out. And as with all fun projects, we find unique problems to solve here and there. But I think when this is all done and sanded down, this will look great. We'll get the insides and the outsides. I'm starting with an 80 grit to really remove that, and then we'll do a 120 to 220 to really finish that off. Then we get to oil them and then put the stuff back together. All right, well, we got all that sanding done. Did 80, 150, and then 220. And now it's time to oil our gunnels. The stuff used to be called Begwood Elixir. You can now know it as tried and true original wood finish, I believe it's called. Tried and true is the brand. Linseed oil and beeswax. It's what I've always used. Pretty particular, have a particular affinity to it. So what we'll do is we'll just keep feeding these gunnels with this stuff, let them keep soaking it up. Essentially, once they are done being thirsty and sucking the stuff up, we'll wipe off the excess, and then we'll be able to install the rest of our bits. Here we go. Okay, the gunnels are done. We got the seat installed. We're doing the thwarts, and we even made a couple new handles out of extra outwale material, so that should come together really nicely aesthetically. Every project is full of its idiosyncrasies. This one is not any different. Turns out when we pulled the seat hardware, these are not all matching bolts, and so we had to do a scramble and find some hardware that worked. Would not have been my first choice, at least as a clean finish, but we got that fixed. And then with the new thwarts and handles, the old ones were routed out. We did not do that to save a little bit of time, which meant a little bit more hardware scramble, but we did find some appropriate stuff. So a mental note for myself and for anybody else undertaking this project is double check that your hardware will turn over from the original stuff to the new stuff. Save yourself a little bit of headache and digging around buckets of bolts. But we're back on track. We're going to get this knocked out today and have a finished canoe. Okay, so I got one gunnel oiled, and you can see how that really just warms up that wood and brings it to life. Did one full pass on everything. If you look closely, we can see there's some dull spots where it is soaking up pretty well. So I'm going to hit the other gunnel, then come back, and we'll do a couple of laps. And when it seems to stop absorbing all that delicious protection to waterproof these suckers, then we're good. And here is the finished project. Custom handles, everything all fastened, vacuumed back up. And this boat is ready to hit the water.